We're going to turn to the public sector, to the government bodies. Now, cloud may be a big deal, as we've heard in corporations, but public bodies, of course, have a completely different set of demands and expectations on them, not to mention a level of public scrutiny. So to explore this, our next guests are from an organization you may have heard of called NASCIO, which represents the chief information officers of US state governments. So their members are responsible for everything from getting your driver's license renewed to getting a tax refund processed. They're all very important people. I'm really delighted to have got them here today. Doug Robinson is the executive director of NASCIO. He helps state CIOs with all the strategic advice and support that they need on pretty much every aspect of their technology strategy. Doug actually began his career as a political scientist, so he understands not only the technology but also the people that everyone is dealing with. And J.R. Sloan is actually currently the chief information officer for the state of Arizona. In his day job, and means he's responsible for keeping the bytes flowing to 7 or so million Arizonans. Welcome. He's also the chair of a very interesting new organization called StateRAP, which I hope we're going to talk about because I think it has some real interesting content there for lotteries. So welcome, both of you. Before we start the conversation, we're going to have another one of our little polls. Can we bring up the second question, please? So what or who do you think is likely to drive cloud adoption by lotteries? And what we're really looking for here is the influencers. If you think it's the technology people that are driving it, or if you think it's actually player demand, we'd like to know. It's really interesting because, of course, it feeds into the whole question of why. Why would you do this and why now? So whilst you're thinking about that, let's turn to Doug and J.R. Doug, I think the folks in the audience might actually be quite pleasantly surprised to find out what's actually happening in state level adoption of cloud technologies, because I guess the perception is not much. I mean, we hear quite a lot of news about what's going on at the federal level. Can you fill us in? I mean, are the states ahead? Are they behind? What's the state of play right now?
Charles, I would describe, based on our research and research with our partners, I would describe the states are slightly behind, but they're aggressively moving forward. I think it was slow to grow. We've had cloud on our radar since 2009. So annually, we do a top 10 strategies and priorities for the state CIOs. It's a top 10 ballot, and we publish that every year. And that cloud first appeared in 2009, but we've seen it slowly move up to where it's been in the top 3 priority since 2012. So it's been high on the list. And what we've seen right now is around 20% of the total workload of all the state government applications are now in the cloud. And we just mentioned hybrid cloud. That is clearly the desired kind of end state operating environment for state CIOs. 89% in our most recent study said that their aspiration is that they have a hybrid cloud environment. So again, private cloud, meaning on-premise cloud. Almost every state is doing that today to some degree. And then moving to public cloud services, and certainly all of the companies that we know and love in that space have states as customers. If you look at across the board, the mean number of cloud service providers that states are using is over 20, in fact, 22. Wow. So there's a lot. Their states are doing a lot. There are some states that have several dozen cloud service providers. And I think the recognition for the audience is that states are very complex and diverse environments. And so they have mission spaces within all these various large agencies. And some of them can be quite dramatic when you look at the scale. States are spending about a little over 60 billion this year, 60 billion with a B, on information technology. And cloud is the major force of change, and they're trying to adjust and modernize their environment by by moving to cloud services and meet the expectations of their citizens.
Let me get straight. You said 20% of workload is already taking place in the cloud. That's astonishing. Can you give us a couple of examples? What some states are actually doing with it?
Well, I think, a great and contemporary example is what's going on with vaccine, COVID response and vaccine. A lot of states had to move very quickly, had to pivot, had to set up both vaccine registration and scheduling systems for millions and millions of folks. And many of the states moved to cloud services and back-end cloud providers to be able to do that. That was very important because they had to move very, very quickly. And that's something, obviously, speed to market is not something that states are known for, but they had a real sense of urgency. I think an example of an area of unemployment insurance where states were not prepared for the need for flexibility and scalability is a great example. Only one state really had moved their unemployment insurance claims processing to the cloud. And so majority of the states were really faced with major issues around being able to scale to handle millions and millions of new claimants. And so I think in the future, we've already seen this in the next 2 to 3 years, most of the states are going to be moving to those environments and using third-party providers to supply those services. So this is really a discussion about services and transformation and speed and flexibility, and really not about technology, because it's available ubiquitously for states.
J.R., let's talk about state ramp. I'd love to talk about Arizona, but business first. Tell us about state ramp, because I think there's a lot of interesting read across from what you're doing with the states to facilitate migration to cloud, and some of the thought processes that U.S. lotteries may well already be undertaking. Well, so tell us about it. What is it? Why did you set it up? And what's actually happening right now?
So as state governments, and I'll really talk more specifically about Arizona's journey, but know that, as Doug indicated, really all the states across the nation are really moving towards cloud, and cloud is part of their core strategies going forward. We as states hold about every type of regulated data that you can imagine, everything from tax data to health data to social services data to criminal justice data that either is in our environments, transits our networks, and we are the stewards. We are responsible for that data and protecting it, and we're responsible not only if it's on premise in a data center that maybe we think we have full control of, or if we put it into a cloud environment. We have to ensure that data still receives the same level of regulatory compliance and protection. So State Ramp really was born out of the combination of the fact that we wanted all the benefits of the speed, the agility, the elasticity, moving from a CapEx to OpEx model, all the advantages that are out there in the cloud, but we had to protect our data at the same time. So Arizona had stood up its own assessment program where over time we've reviewed maybe 250 different vendors that have solutions that are in the cloud, but that are holding state data. And the type of data could be everything from just what we call PII, which is like, okay, as your name, your phone number, could get to more sensitive information like Social Security, all the way to what we would call more confidential information or information that is classified and needs to receive a higher level of protection. As we put the data in the cloud, we would have to assess those vendors, assess their ability to protect the data. That takes a good amount of effort. We had to look across our entire acquisition process so that we're not waiting until you've selected a vendor, you're trying to kick off your project, and then you're saying, well, what about security? We have to build security into that entire process. So State Ramp is really about recognizing that not only did Arizona have to do this, but there's 50 plus other states that are trying to address the same problem. And many of the same vendors that are trying to do business in Arizona are trying to do business with other states. And so they were having to go through this process multiple times. And so state ramps is really the idea of how can we make this more efficient and effective while still assuring the security and compliance for the states. And then for vendors, giving them a certify once, use many times model. And so I think, relative to lotteries, there may not be much in terms of, we'll say, federal requirements from a security perspective, but there are common security frameworks like the NIST 800-53 framework, which the FedRAMP program is modeled off of. That's what State Ramp is modeled off of. And I suspect that there's a good mapping to any of the security requirements that would come through for state lotteries to ensure proper protection, separation where needed, and the right controls can be in place, and then audited and verified.
So you think that for lotteries and who are facing similar situations, there are two aspects. I think the first is that their state might well already be involved in what you're doing, and so they might have these standards. But secondly, there is going to be some commonality between the states, and you're really also setting up the principle of sharing those standards across states. That's pretty much how it works.
I'll say yes. And Doug can talk about. I mean, there's need to, but there's lots of different federal regulatory requirements. As states, we're asking the federal government to try, come and harmonize those, right? Because they were all sort of developed independently over a long period of time. There is commonality. The fact is that between the common standards like IRS Pub 1075 for your federal tax information. You've got MARSI for Medicare, Medicaid information. We have CGIS, which is the criminal justice information protection. You've got HIPAA for health information, right? But a lot of these have common frameworks that we can map together, and again through standards like the NIST standard, can apply that in a way that assures that the right classification of data receives the right protection.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Well, we're out of time, but before you go, I just want to look at the poll and see what it says, and if there's anything, get your views on it. So this is really about asking the lottery operators themselves, what do they think is likely to drive cloud adoption? And the clear winner here is the technology side. Now, does that chime with your experience in the States? Is it technology that's driven it, or was it other factors?
So my answer on that would be, it's the business value that the technology brought, not just the technology itself, right? The business value of again, agility, innovation. Just a quick story. Over the course of the pandemic, states were able to adopt and incorporate technologies, not just the vaccine registration systems, but we were able to deploy technologies like chatbots and AI for fraud prevention, for providing scaled service. Where we had, I'll say Arizona had our unemployment insurance, went from 15,000 cases, to 2 million very quickly. And our call volumes, went up. The websites went crazy. If we hadn't had our core infrastructure in the cloud, that would have just knocked us over. But thankfully, we were able to scale real time with the demand coming in, and we're able to respond and ensure that everyone got the service that they deserved. Brilliant.
Thank you, guys. We're fully out of time. Thank you so much for coming along. It's been really interesting. There are tons of materials in the digital library which you can access at the end of the event from NASCIO. And you can also go and visit their website where there's even more, and access the research. The CIO survey that Doug mentioned earlier is particularly interesting, I think you'll find. And it's a really useful, I hope, as a backdrop to what you're thinking about doing in your own states with the cloud now and in the future. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So, key drivers for cloud adoption. I mean, clearly, what J.R. was just saying about the explosion in the demand during the pandemic seems to be reflective of a kind of a wider cultural shift of people just getting used to getting things on demand. I can get everything delivered. I can get it streamed. Why can't I get government services? And I'm fairly sure from what the guys have been saying that that's already or about to leak through into lottery land. The key enablers, well, it's alignment really between the political side and the technology, for sure. But sensible approaches and strategies to risk mitigation and in initiatives like State Ramp, I think, spread best practice and can be really helpful.